Hello, Year 10. One more from me. This is Mrs. Doughty. That's me with the shield. Okay, just in case again you forget what we look like. There we are, your friendly neighborhood English team. Okay, so this is Lockdown Lesson 2, Evaluation. Some of you, as I said before, have studied this with your teachers, and some of you, this will be the first time that you're looking at it. So what you need, okay, we're looking at that. What you need is a copy of the extract called The Woman in White, which is an extract from a longer novel by Wilkie Collins. And I'd really like it if you could print just the extract. I've given you the exam paper as well to look at and to use if you want. But if you can at least print the extract, that would be helpful. If you can't, you can look at it electronically and come back and forth, or you can work straight from the PowerPoint, just so that there's multiple options for you to work from, okay? Do grab a pen and some paper, or in my case, a pink marker or a paint stick, because that's what my children leave lying around, okay? Because today we're looking at one of the questions from the reading paper which is worth the most marks. So we're looking at how to evaluate. You need to know how to analyze, though, before you can evaluate effectively, okay? So this question appears again as well on the longer paper, and it's worth 15 marks again. So there's 30 marks across both papers for evaluation. It's as opposed to for language and structure, it's only 21. There's 9 more marks for this, for your GCSE in the English language. So it's quite important for you to get it right. And the more you practice, and the more you practice, and the more you practice, get comfortable with it, the better at it you will be, okay? Okay, so my question to warm us up is, which of these figures is the most intimidating? So the first thing you need to do is define the term intimidating. If you're going to make a judgment about whether or not someone is intimidating or more intimidating than someone else, then you need to decide what it is that makes someone or something intimidating. So before we start, write the title intimidating and make a couple of pointers or notes about what you feel is the definition of intimidating. And pause the video while you're doing that. When you're done, you can press play again and we'll start with the answers. Okay, so if you've decided what you think intimidating means, I'm not going to tell you what it means. You need to think about it. So I have some photos here. Notice I didn't say, you know, man or woman, so we'll see what I come up with here. Which one of these 5 photographs is the most intimidating and which one is the least? That's what you need to be thinking about. Is it, number 1, Rosie the Riveter, famous World War II poster about women entering the workforce? Look at her. Look at those guns. Muscles, right? Rasputin, a Russian priest. Weird looking mouse. I thought it was Danger Mouse, but apparently I was wrong. It's not Danger Mouse, but I'm just going to call him weird looking mouse. Vladimir Putin's, see what I did there, Rasputin and Vladimir Putin's twin brother, I think. And man wearing balaclava mask. Okay, so there's your 5 pictures. Which one of these is the most intimidating? Just make that choice. Okay, so once you've made your choice between these 5 pictures, then what you need to do now is rank them. So give each one a number between 1 and 5, 1 being the most intimidating and 5 being the least intimidating. So you know what you defined as intimidating. So which one here do you think fits that criteria? Or has your criteria changed once you looked at these photographs? No doubt, most of you would have picked something different. Some of you may have gone with intimidating or creepy looking mouse. Some of you may have picked Rasputin, the weird priest. Maybe you picked Rosie the Riveter or the man with the balaclava. So what I'm going to do now is go through who I think was the most intimidating. And what I do on the screen with mine, I want you to do with yours. So on your piece of paper in front of you, you don't need to draw a sketch, although you can, or you could draw something that represents who you've chosen. So it could be the woman showing her muscles, or it could be the mouse with an angry look on his face. So you draw that out, please, and then Beside that, I want you to give me 3 reasons why you picked that particular picture. So for example, I picked man in balaclava. At first I thought, oh, I'm not really sure if he's a man, but then if you look closely at it, the upper lip, he's got a mustache, so I certainly hope he's a man, but you know, who knows? Okay, so person in balaclava. Now, 3 reasons why this photo strikes an intimidating figure to me are: 1, the fact that he's wearing a balaclava. 2, he's glaring directly at me, and it really does this. If you're looking at this and you kind of like move your head, it does look like his eyes are following you where you go. It's a bit creepy. Okay, and thirdly, he is pointing a gun. Okay, so in my evaluation then, I'm thinking, okay, the man in the balaclava is definitely, yeah, he's very effectively showing me here that he's intimidating. Why is he doing that? Or how, sorry, is he doing that? Well, he's wearing a balaclava, he's glaring directly at me, and he's holding a gun. Those are 3 pretty solid reasons. But this still wouldn't be good enough, because saying that he's wearing a balaclava, well, where I come from in Canada, people wear balaclavas when they go out in the ice to avoid frostbite. So balaclavas are not necessarily always an indication of foul play, but in this context, in this photograph, what's the reason behind, or the detail behind, that balaclava that gives me the impression that he is very intimidating? And whatever figure you picked, if you think about that figure or you go back and you look at that picture, what is it about that picture? So if you picked Angry Mouse Man, give me 3 reasons why Angry Mouse Man is the most intimidating figure. All right. And then once you've done that and you've picked those 3 things, each of those 3 things needs to have some detail behind it to explain how it works. All right. So why does the balaclava in this picture work to cut an intimidating figure? I wonder if you can hear my children fighting in the background. Okay. So what? He's wearing a balaclava. So what? He's glaring directly at me and he's holding a gun. Well, for the balaclava, a reason why I think this is making him seem intimidating is because I can't see his face. And if I can't see his face, then there's this mystery and the unknown is frightening. And that's intimidating. He seems cold, he seems calculated. Clearly, he does not want you to see his face. Secondly, he's glaring directly at me. Why does this add to him seeming intimidating? Well, if he's glaring at me, it certainly seems threatening or intimidating. Eye contact is a very intimate thing, and if someone is looking directly at you, and there are other factors which are intimidating, it can be extremely effective in creating a sense of threat, right? I can see that there's no emotion in his eyes in this case, right? He's not crying, he doesn't look sad, he's not looking conflicted, he looks very serious. And the gun, perhaps a gun in and of itself could be thought of as intimidating, but what in this particular photograph makes it intimidating? It's not just a gun, it is representing perhaps death, right? If someone were to pull a gun, you'd be thinking about the fact that you could die and that you think that it could be painful, and the realization that you won't be able to do all the things on your bucket list, right? So an end, a sense of an ending, as they say. Okay, so what I'm trying to say here is we have photographs that we were asked to say which one is the most intimidating and which one is the least. I asked you to pick which one you felt was the most intimidating, and now I've modeled for you what I want you to do with that photograph. So I want 3 reasons why. You don't have to hand this in. This is just to get your evaluative skills moving in your brain. All right, 3 reasons why, and then more detail after that. So what? He's wearing a balaclava. So what? He's glaring directly at me. And so what? He's carrying a gun. And he's pointing it directly at me. Okay? This process is exactly what you have to do with a text when you look at it and you evaluate it to see if it's effective or not. Okay, so hopefully if you can, you've printed your extract. If not, here's what it looks like. I'll read the rest to you in the next couple of slides. But the first thing we're going to do is exactly the same as we did for analyzing language and structure. So you would in this exam have already done that because you would have gone through it and read it and done it for the first time you approached the extract. But because we didn't do question 3 with this extract, we're still going to do it now as though it was the first time we saw the extract. So, who, what, where, when? We have to identify these things. So in this extract, the narrator is walking back to London alone late at night. He has arrived at a deserted crossroads. Guaranteed someone in the exam would have said at first, he has arrived at a, at a deserts crossroad. Guaranteed. Make sure you read it carefully. Okay? So who, what, where, when? Who, narrator, he doesn't have a name. What? He's he's walking back to London late at night. So where is he? He's in London. He's just outside of London at a deserted crossroads, and he's alone. Now that's significant. What if the beginning here said, in this extract, the narrator is walking back to London with a group of friends and they're having a great time, and each one is drinking Blue Wicked? Well, that would have a lot different tone, wouldn't it? But it doesn't. It specifically says alone at night at a crossroads. Now, I'm sure you can probably guess what kind of text this is going to be when it right away says alone at night. Okay, so if we were in class, I'd be asking you to make some predictions now. What kind of story is this going to be? The title is The Woman in White by Wilkie Collins. Okay, so I'm going to read the text to you, as you would do. Read it once, and then you divide it into 3, and you read it again. Okay, so always read it twice. And I'm going to read it very dramatically, by the way. In one moment, every drop of blood in my body was brought to a stop by the touch of a hand laid lightly and suddenly on my shoulder from behind me. I turned on the instant, with my fingers tightening round the handle of my stick. Presumably that's a walking stick. There, in the middle of the broad, bright, high road, there, as if it had at that moment sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven, stood the figure of a solitary woman, dressed from head to foot in white garments, her head bent in grave inquiry on mine, her hand pointing to the dark cloud over London as I faced her. I was far too seriously startled by the suddenness with which this extraordinary apparition stood before me in the dead of night and in that lonely place to ask what she wanted. The strange woman spoke first. "Is that the road to London?" she said. I looked attentively at her as she put that singular question to me. It was then nearly 1 o'clock. All I could discern distinctly by the moonlight was a colourless, youthful face, meagre and sharp to look at about the cheeks and chin, large, grave, wistfully attentive eyes, nervous, uncertain lips, and light hair of a pale brownish-yellow hue. There was nothing wild, nothing immodest in her manner. It was quiet and self-controlled, a little melancholy, and a little touched by suspicion. Not exactly the manner of a lady, and at the same time not a manner of a woman of the humblest rank of life. The voice, little as I had yet heard of it, had something curiously still and mechanical in its tones, and the utterance was remarkably rapid. She held a small bag in her hand, and her dress, bonnet, shawl, and gown, all of white, was, so far as I could guess, certainly not composed of a very delicate or very expensive materials. Her figure was slight, and rather above the average height. Her gait, that means the way she's walking, her gait and actions free from the slightest approach to extravagance. This was all I could observe of her in the dim light, and under the perplexingly strange circumstances of our meeting. What sort of woman she was, and how she came to be out alone in the high road an hour after midnight, I altogether failed to guess. The one thing of which I felt certain was, that the grossest of mankind could not have misconstrued her motive in speaking, even at that suspiciously late hour, and in that suspiciously lonely place. "Did you hear me?" she said, still quietly and rapidly, without the least fretfulness or impatience. "I asked if that was the way to London." "Yes," I replied. That is the way. It leads to St. John's Wood and the Regent's Park. You must excuse me not answering you before. I was rather startled by your sudden appearance in the road, and I am, even now, unable to account for it." "You don't suspect me of doing anything wrong, do you?" "Have done nothing wrong. I have met with an accident. I am very unfortunate in being here alone so late. Why do you suspect me of doing wrong?" She spoke with unnecessary earnestness and agitation, and shrank back from me several paces. I did my best to reassure her. "Pray, don't suppose that I have any idea of suspecting you," I said, "or any other wish than to be of assistance to you, if I can. I only wondered at your appearance in the wood, because it seemed to me to be empty the instant before I saw you." She turned and pointed back to a place at the junction of the road to London and the road to Hampstead, where there was a gap in the hedge. "I heard you coming," she said, "and hid there to see what sort of man you were, before I risked speaking. I doubted and feared about it till you passed, and then I was obliged to steal after you and touch you." "Steal after me and touch me? Why not call to me? Strange, to say the least of it." Okay, so that was The Woman in White. Hopefully you liked my dramatic reading, but do read it again, particularly if you've printed it out. And you can always turn the sound down on the PowerPoint or video and read it yourself. Because as I said last time, these are 19th century extracts, so the language will be different to what you're used to. Okay, so do read it carefully again yourself. And then once you do that, let's answer lines 1 to 2. Okay, question 1. From lines 1 to 2, identify a word or phrase which describes how the hand is laid on the narrator's shoulder. Okay, so the question is, from lines 1 to 2, identify a word or phrase which describes how the hand is laid on the shoulder. Here is the section that it's asking you for. "In one moment, every drop of blood in my body was brought to a stop by the touch of a hand laid lightly and suddenly on my shoulder from behind me." So if you came up with lightly and suddenly, you'd be right. Okay? Okay, for the next one, I'll read you the question, and then I'm going to be quiet and you're going to read the extract there at the bottom and answer the question. So if you're working on line paper, just write number 1 and number 2. You don't need to write the whole sentence either. You should just write the word or two that applies to your answer. It's one of the few times in English we tell you not to use full sentences, because you really are just wanting to be as fast as possible and as accurate as possible. So don't worry about using full sentences. Okay, so from lines 4 to 10, give 2 ways in which the appearance of the woman surprises the narrator. And here it says you can use your own words or quotations from the text, and hopefully remember from last week me being adamant about this: do not use your own words. Just quote the text, not the whole sentence, again, just the word or two that apply. So you read it, it's down there in the white box, starting from there in the middle of the broad, bright high road and ending with "the strange woman spoke first." You read it and then answer the question. Okay, so 2 ways in which the appearance of the woman surprises the narrator. Now, the appearance of the woman, and how does she surprise? So you could have said dressed from head to foot in white garments, her hand pointing to the dark cloud over London. Okay? So any of those would have worked, but it is about her appearance. So she could have sprung out from the earth or dropped from heaven would work as well. Okay, right. Okay, so question 3, we're not going to do today, but I have left it in, and I've left the extract here for you, and your teacher may ask you to do this as an extension task. But if not, then you can just skip to the next slide, which is the evaluation question. Okay? Right, so question 4. Question 4 is always asking you to evaluate, as you know, and you have to evaluate the entire extract, unlike the language and structure question. So you're not looking at just a certain section, you're looking at the entire thing from beginning to end. So it's really important that you have divided it up into 3. All right, and it's very important that you highlight the keywords in the question. So it's worth spending the time thinking about what am I actually being asked about. So in the beginning of this slide, when I said you need to think about what it means to be intimidating in order to judge if something is intimidating, likewise here it says, in this extract, there is an attempt to create an atmosphere of mystery. And it doesn't say, is there an attempt to create mystery? It says there is an attempt. So the author has tried to create an atmosphere of mystery. Well, you need to define the terms. What does that mean? What sorts of things would you be looking for, or would you be trying to achieve if you wanted to create an atmosphere of mystery? What's going to make something mysterious? So some of the things that you might think about, and you might, if you have the question printed, you can make some notes around it, or you can write it down in your notes. What is it that defines something as mystery? Now, we've already read the extract, so we know what it's about. But generally, you might say things like there should be some tension, there should be some unanswered questions. Certainly there might be a lot of the unknown. We might not know what he's doing there. We don't know why she's there. So what are the things that would qualify to make things mysterious, as opposed to, say, really frightening or really a general air of excitement, right? Okay, and the question, so here I always tell my students that this beginning bit is like a stepping stone for them. It's a gift from the exam board. They're essentially giving you the answer, and they're saying, this is mysterious. And so in the question, where it says evaluate how successfully this is achieved, you need to say how the author has created a sense of mystery and how well the author has created it. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is, as I said before in the last lesson, you want to divide your extract into 3. And some students, we've worked with students for a long time, and they'll kind of think, oh, I've done it in my head. Don't do it in your head. Do it physically on the page, because in an exam setting, you're under time pressure, and the little habits that you've created for each of these papers will stick, and they will help. All right, so divide your page into 3. It doesn't really matter where you create the divisions. It will naturally happen in the right place for you when you've read through that extract twice. Okay, so you divide it up into 3. So you have a clear beginning, a clear middle, and a clear end. And part of the reason for that is if you want to get a decent amount of marks, to make sure that your grade gets above a grade 4 or 5, you want to try and make sure that you're pulling evidence from the entire article. So what we generally say is make sure that you have a little bit of evidence from the beginning, a little bit of evidence from the end, and if possible, 2 bits from the middle. So you should aim for 3 to 4 paragraphs in very detailed paragraphs, okay? But if you can't get to 4, then you must have at least 3. You will not get a decent mark if you don't write at least 3 paragraphs. So you have to look at 3 aspects of the text at least, but aim for 4. Okay, so how does the author create an atmosphere of mystery? Well, they might do this through the setting. Generally, you're not going to get a mystery story set on a really hot summer beautiful day with the birds singing and the heady scent of roses in the air. It's very unlikely, right? It's going to be nighttime. It's going to be misty, foggy, right? Where will the setting be if it's an atmosphere of mystery? They might do this through people or characters. So the characters are not going to be an open book, as they say. There's going to be questions around the characters that are not going to be clear. Okay, ideas. It might just be the way the characters interact with each other. It could be something that's pulled through the article. Ideas really covers everything, doesn't it? Um, and tone. So tone is going to be the emotion that is presented in the text, and events is going to be anything that happens. So for example, the man meeting the woman in the first place is an event. Looking at how he is presented would be people. Looking at how she is presented is people. And the setting would be the road, the crossroads, the nighttime, the moonlight, right? And the tone would be kind of what's created through all of that. And what kind of emotion is placed into the reader as they read. What is conveyed, I mean. Okay? And you have to make a judgment on all of this. So is it mysterious? Is it really mysterious? Like, is it very, very effective? Or is it just meh? It's kind of effective, but really it falls flat a little bit in certain places. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to read this little bit again. I'm going to do the beginning with you. Remember, we said we divided it into 3, okay? So what I'm going to do in this lesson is go through the first section, the beginning with you, and show you what's expected and show you a way to do it. There's many ways to do it, but I'll show you one way, one method. And then I'm going to leave you, the expectation is that you'll finish this and hand it in to your teacher for next Monday. So I'm going to model one paragraph for you, and then you're going to write 3 more evaluative C's paragraphs for your teacher. Okay, so I'll read the beginning bit, which I've said is the beginning. If yours is a little bit before this or a little bit after this, it doesn't matter, okay? In one moment, every drop of blood in my body was brought to a stop by the touch of a hand laid lightly and suddenly on my shoulder from behind me. I turned on the instant, with my fingers tightening around the handle of my stick. There, in the middle of the broad, bright high road, there, as if it had that moment sprung out of the earth or dropped from the heaven, stood the figure of a solitary woman, dressed from head to toe in white garments. Her face bent in grave inquiry on mine, her hand pointing to the dark cloud over London as I faced her. I was far too startled, seriously startled, by the suddenness with which this extraordinary apparition stood before me in the dead of night and in that lonely place, to ask what she wanted. The strange woman spoke first. "Is that the road to London?" she said. Okay, so you could look at the setting, and then you would notice that it's described as the dead of night and a lonely place. Okay, and it's a broad, bright, high road. But you could, what we're going to focus on now is the presentation of the people. Okay, so we're going to look specifically at how Wilkie Collins uses people to create an atmosphere of mystery. And then after we've thought about how he does it, then we're going to consider how well he does it. Okay. So first of all, let's look at him and the way that he's presented. So every drop of blood in my body was brought to a stop. So what I want you to do now is pause the PowerPoint in a second after I've explained, and I want you just to look at this section at the beginning of your extract. And if you have it in front of you, you can physically highlight it or underline it or just scribble notes on 2 different things. Look at how she is presented and look at how he is presented and their reaction to each other, okay? And if you don't have it printed and you're just looking at the screen, just pause it and just think about it, or write down perhaps 2 columns on written paper, girl, woman in white, and then narrator, and make a list, okay, at how they're both presented. And then come back to the PowerPoint. Because if every drop of body stops, that would indicate to me that he's feeling fear, and the fact that his fingers are tightening around the handle of his stick shows that he's maybe trying to protect himself, or maybe it's tightening in case he has to hit someone with it or something. He's certainly afraid, and he feels this light hand suddenly on his shoulder, and that's what makes his fingers tighten, right? Now she looks like she sprung out of the earth. She could have dropped from heaven. She's dressed in White garments, her face is a grave inquiry. You may remember from your study of A Christmas Carol, grave in this sense does not mean 6 feet under the ground, it means serious. So she has a very serious expression on her face. Okay? He calls her an extraordinary apparition. Now, if you read this extract and you didn't know what an apparition was, that word is not explained to you in the glossary, so you wouldn't be able to comment on that. You'd have to leave it. Focus on the words you do know, not on the ones you don't know. But hopefully, particularly since you've studied Macbeth, you know what an apparition is. Do you know? It's a ghost, okay, or a kind of ghostly vision. All right, an apparition is a vision that doesn't seem real. Okay, so he calls her an extraordinary apparition, and he also calls her a strange woman. So those are all the things that I found. You may have found different things. So these are generally the aspects of this beginning of the text that Collins uses to describe the narrator and to describe the woman. The question is, how does he use people? Okay. So which one do you think out of these is the most effective here? Is it the way he's presented? Is it the way she's presented? Is it how they interact with each other? They're not really interacting yet. So you have to make that choice, okay? Okay, so if you look just at his reaction, and I've already gone through this with you really, I think it looks like he's quite afraid by the fact that he tightened his grip around the stick and he doesn't have any blood, has stopped flowing, so he's frozen, okay? And these are the things that I think indicate that he's afraid. Okay, so I know my voice would have cut out there, so sorry about that. But how does he see her? There's a little bit more to say about this one, I think. It says that she sprung from the earth. She dropped from the heavens. Her face was full of grave inquiry. She's wearing all white garments. She's an extraordinary apparition, and she's a strange woman. So apparition, we already know what that means. Okay. A ghost-like image of a person, headless apparition, a vision, a remarkable or unexpected appearance of someone or something. Now, if she sprung from the earth, and then they talk about heaven, if you think of the context of heaven, what's the opposite of heaven? Hell. So if she came out of the earth, what is he saying she could be? Is she a demon? Or, in other words, does she have bad intentions? Or, he also says that she dropped from heaven and she's wearing white garments. And this gives us the impression that she could be from heaven or angelic. So is the idea that she could be a demon or she could be an angel? We're not sure. It could be one or the other. So remember when I said, well, we have to decide what it means if something's mysterious. Here we don't know. We don't know if she's a demon or we don't know if she's an angel. We just know she's wearing all white. She's a strange woman. She's an extraordinary apparition. So she's a vision. So here I'm sure that you're getting a sense for what this woman could be, right? But we don't know. Is that successfully creating an atmosphere of mystery? Okay, so clearly I think that it is creating an atmosphere. And what we're looking at here is Collins's presentation of the character, the person. Okay, so here is an opening paragraph to a 15-mark response. Okay, and this is my C's paragraph, and then I'm going to break it down for you. Okay. So you'll remember C's, hopefully what it stands for: statement, evidence, inference, zooming in, and effect on reader. This is a different kind of question, but you still ultimately have to do the same thing. You have to explain how it works and therefore analyze it, but you also have to add in an evaluation. So you have to say whether it's effective and how effective it is. So here's my example. At the beginning, Collins successfully creates an atmosphere of mystery through the presentation of the strange woman and the narrator's reaction to her. At first, he doesn't see her, but his blood stops and his fingers tighten around his walking stick. This effectively creates mystery right away because the reader immediately can sense the narrator's fear of the unknown entity that has suddenly touched him. He then describes her as an extraordinary apparition who seems to have sprung out of the earth or dropped from heaven. Collins doesn't let the reader know if the woman is real or a ghost, which sets an effective, mysterious atmosphere. This is successful because not only does she surprise him out of the blue on a lonely London road, but he can't tell if she's good or evil. If she sprung out of the earth, this suggests that she could be a demon from hell, but if she dropped from heaven, she could be an angel. The fact that after this the reader finds out she's wearing white, and the idea that she could be angelic she could be angelic takes away a bit of the fear, but still leaves the idea that she could be a ghost, and the reader would want to know who she is and what she wants from the narrator. Okay, so my response, you'll see that my statement, which I've highlighted in red, just simply answers the question. Okay, so there is an attempt to create a mysterious atmosphere, evaluate how successfully, and my statement just answers that. Yes, this successfully creates an air of mystery. And how does it do it? Through the presentation of the strange woman. So my evidence for this is a little different than for language and structure. You shouldn't think of it really as just one word or a little bit of text. You do need to write a lot about a little, but you can pull quotations from different places and put them together. So when I'm finished explaining this, you should go back and look at that little section and just see the bits in quotation marks are obviously straight from the text. I've just put it together differently to suit my argument and to make it a bit shorter, okay? And then I've done my inference in blue, okay? So I've thought, well, I think that they do this because you don't know if the woman's a ghost. You don't know whether she's, good or evil. Okay. So that's two different things, ghost or good or evil, you don't know. And then in the black there, bolded, if she sprung out of the earth, this suggests. So I'm still zooming in, but not necessarily on a metaphor or a simile or the use of a word. It's really on just the idea that's associated with that person. So if she sprung out of the earth, just like the guy wearing the balaclava, yeah, okay, he's wearing a balaclava. That's intimidating. She sprung out of the earth. That's mysterious. But why is it mysterious? Because if she's coming from the earth, then she could be a demon, or you could have even just said, maybe carried on with the ghost idea, like the undead. If she's come up from the ground, is she some kind of revenant, right? Or a dead body come to life? We don't know at the moment, okay? And then my last bit, I've just underlined just a little line about the reader. And remember what I said last time, this is strictly a skeletal frame. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this order. Okay, so you're still using C's to answer the question, and you're adding in what we call evaluative language. So if you look at successfully, I use right in the first line, and then I have effectively and successfully later on. Effectively is in the fourth line down. I should have put it in different colors, sorry. But so I'm using different forms of evaluative language to say, yes, this is successful. He's done a really good job at this. This is how it works, and this is why it is so successful. Okay? Okay, so your task, moving right along, is to answer the question with the rest of the extract. So I've already done this bit. You need to now do the rest of it. Okay, so you need to look at that middle bit and pick out two different things to say about that. What is in that? And it could be more about the people, could be more about the characters, could be about the way they speak or the way they interact with each other, or it could be just an idea that he's brought up, or it could be the setting, or it might be an event that happens between the two of them. Think about those five ideas, the setting, the people, the ideas, the tone, or the events, all right, is a good way in, all right. And then the final bit, the very end, what has the author done in the end of that extract to help create an atmosphere of mystery, okay? So you're completing another 3 C-style paragraphs to answer the question. Your teacher is going to mark you out of 15 for this, bearing in mind that one of the paragraphs is already written by me. So I've written a near 15 out of 15. So if all of your paragraphs are written like mine, it would be 15 out of 15. Whatever you get will be based on what you've written, with the idea that you'd have a fully fleshed out answer if you had done the first bit yourself. Does that make sense? They're going to use the GCSE marking criteria for you. Okay. So I'm not going to read, you'll be happy to know, the rest of the slide. If you skip through now to the end, I'll just repeat what you have to do if you don't remember. But you can turn the sound off and either use your extract or read this through yourself. Okay? I don't really want to give you any clues here, but do look at the way that her face looks. I shouldn't have told you that, but have a look and see at how her face looks here and think of why the author would have presented her this way, and why, if or why, that creates an atmosphere of mystery. Okay, so you can stop this now or skip to the last slide where I just repeat the task to you, and then you have this slide that has the middle bit, and then the next slides have the text on it. So again, if you can't print, or if you can't even access the PDF document or the Word document, then you can use it from the slide or from the paper, okay? So this is still the middle bit and then getting on to the end. And then this is the end. That last line is quite good. Steal after me and touch me, why not call to me? Strange to see the least. So she's hiding from him in the end. She said, I heard you coming and hid there to see what sort of man you were before I risked speaking. Why would you hide? I doubted and feared about it until you passed, and then I was obliged to steal after you. So think about what she's doing here. Hiding in the gap in the hedge. It's a bit weird. Okay, so before you hand in your 3 C's paragraphs, shouldn't say just one, but before you hand in your 3 ones, check your work for C's. So what you can do is, if you're handwriting it and taking a picture, you can easily just write an S-E-I-Z-E over your work. Or you can just hand it in typed and just check before you do so that you have all 5 of these parts. Okay, so does your statement answer the question? Is your evidence in quotation marks? So is it clear that it's straight from the text? Your inference needs to be an overall consideration of the effect. You know, why is the author trying to do this? And when you zoom in for an evaluation question, it's not necessarily on how the metaphor works or the simile or the noun or the verb. You're just looking at the presentation. Really anything goes in this, right? But just like the man wearing the balaclava, you still have to explain in detail what you see. So with the picture, you're looking at images. With the text, you're looking at words, okay? And when you talk about the effect on the reader, think about heart and head, the 2 H's. It's either going to make you feel something or it's going to make you think something. So what is the author trying to do here? And of course, with fiction, an author is always trying to entertain, always. But for what purpose? To make you feel really elated, or to make you feel really excited or happy? Or are they trying to make you feel a bit apprehensive or thoughtful or worried or scared? Right? Okay, so good luck, year 10. And today is June 8th. So we're really looking forward to seeing you next week for those of you who are coming in. Hopefully we'll see lots of you there. I looked at the desks are all set up in the English area and in a few of the other areas of the school. And as far as I know, when you come in, you'll be just with your one little bubble of groups of students, and we're the ones that will come to you. So you don't have to move around the school, and it's just a morning. So do come back because we really want to see you, and we don't want you to be suffering in silence as well if there's things that you don't understand from these PowerPoints, okay? So come in because we can reinforce what you're learning through these PowerPoints when you come in, okay? So good luck. Let us know if you don't understand something, okay? And I hope you and your we hope that you and your family are well, and hopefully we'll see each other soon. Okay, bye.